Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. This week, Shawn Busse, Jay Goltz, and Jennifer Kerhin respond to a somewhat depressing view of business ownership offered by an investor who buys businesses for a living. That view, essentially, is that for most owners, building a business is a daily knife fight of long hours, unexpected risks, slow growth, and meager returns. In this episode, I read most of the investors' observations to Shawn, Jay, and Jennifer and get their reactions, which hit upon a bunch of issues that are not widely understood, including how fast growth can destroy a business, how even a profitable company can go bust, and why a good metric to assess the health of a small business just might be how many people have been crying in the bathroom this year. While Shawn, Jay, and Jennifer disagree vehemently with a few of the investors' assertions, kiss my ass, says Jay in response to one, they do acknowledge that he makes a lot of good points, which leads to an obvious question. Why would anyone do this? Why would anyone subject themselves to this kind of life? As you might expect, Shawn, Jennifer, and Jay have a response to that as well. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations, brought to you by our principal sponsor, The Great Game of Business, will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. Same thing with our daily newsletter, the 21 Hats Morning Report, which Inc. magazine named the best newsletter for business owners and which you can subscribe to for free at 21hats.com, where you can also find transcripts of our podcast episodes and lots of other articles and interviews. Joining me this week on the podcast are regulars Shawn Busse, CEO of Kinesis, which is based in Portland, Oregon, and works with small businesses on marketing, culture, and strategy. Jay Goltz, CEO of the Goltz Group, whose companies in Chicago include a picture frame business, artist frame service, and a home furnishing store, Jason Home. And Jennifer Kerhin, who is CEO of SB Expos and Events, an events management business based near Baltimore. The episode is titled, Why Would You Want to Own a Business? Welcome, Shawn, Jay, and Jennifer. It's great to have you here. I think we're going to have some fun today. I recently quoted in the Morning Report from a post written by Brent Beshore. Brent's a very smart guy who buys small businesses for a living. Technically, he has a private equity firm, but it's a different kind of PE firm. He buys companies with no intention of flipping them or of ousting the founder. That's why he calls his company Permanent Equity. He also introduced a big event last year called the Main Street Summit, which was really interesting for a lot of reasons maybe we'll get to. And in his post, Brent wrote, I've had the privilege of peeking behind the curtain at 10,000 plus businesses, some observations, and then he listed 12 or 13. I want to go through some of these observations and get your reactions. I can tell you they paint a pretty bleak picture of life at a small business, and I'm wondering if it made sense to you guys. The first one was, all businesses are loosely functioning disasters. Shawn, you responded to the LinkedIn post that Brent wrote with a little bit of a pushback, I would say. You want to take that one on first?
Yeah, I mean, I read his list and I thought about it a bit and I was like, wow, this doesn't sound like any of my clients. And I realized like it really depends on who you're looking at. If you think about the small business landscape, 90% of small businesses are under $1 million. So you're talking a lot of organizations that don't have a lot of structure, a lot of solopreneurs, a lot of really, really small organizations. So I think, yeah, if I reflect back to my business in its early days, if you were to look at it then when it was under $1 million, it probably was a disaster in a lot of ways, but it's not today.
Well, let me say this, though. Most of the companies that Brent looks at are probably not under $1 million. He looks at bigger companies.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen some larger companies that are a disaster, but I don't know. It seemed pretty cynical to me. It just hasn't been my experience.
It reminds me of what people saying about marriage too. 50% of marriages end in divorce. Why get married? Well, that 50% is also people who are on their second, third, fourth marriages. And I feel like that doesn't mean if there's one failure that if you peek under or inside the house of someone's married at any given snapshot of a day, that marriage might look a disaster. But overall, it's functioning, it's strong, it's the marathon, not the sprint. And I don't think that's fair.
All right. And I also thought about who's coming to Brent, who's giving Brent their financials. So this is somebody who probably wants to sell a business. I have seen in many cases that the people who are really eager to sell their business, even urgent to sell a business, they're often the ones that are not doing really well. If you're running a really healthy business, you're often in no hurry to sell it.
Well, unless you've gotten old, which is the case in most of the people he's probably dealing with at some point. But Lauren, read the first few words. All businesses, what was the word he used?
All businesses are loosely functioning disasters.
Okay, that's all we need. Anyone who, this is my line, everyone who speaks in absolutes is always wrong. What a ridiculous comment. For God's sakes, all businesses, really. There's no businesses out there that aren't, I mean, talk about hyperbole.
Yes, it is hyperbole. I'm going to stop you there. People talk that way. You happen to be very precise with the language that you use, and that's a good thing. He says at the end, it's really not all businesses. So let's focus on the substance and not the fact that he...
I got it. Let's just say many businesses. Okay, fair enough.
Many is probably true. Sure.
Yeah, and I also think, businesses are made up of people. And people can be complicated. It can be, human life can be messy. If you look at any given business at the moment, could it be a little messy? I think loosely functioning disaster is, I think, Shawn, you said this right, is a cynical view of it. If you look at it from an outside, could it look messy? Could it look not super functional? But we're people. And we're not robots. We're not AI. It's not going to be perfect.
My argument is if they were that big of a disaster, they wouldn't be in business. So they couldn't be that bad or they wouldn't be in business. So is there something to what he's saying? Absolutely. I fully understand his point because until I joined business groups, I thought I was the only one that had problems. And, it is eye-opening. You think you're the only one that has problems with management. You think you're the only ones that have problems with cash. Yes. So his point is, I got it. It's just taken to, I would agree with Shawn, it's cynical for sure.
It's like asking a divorce attorney. It's like about marriage. If you ask a divorce attorney about getting married, they will give you a certain point of view. And so I think that's the point that is important to consider.
I know Brent a little bit. He's not a cynical person. I think it's a matter of choosing the right word.
Yeah, sure. No. There's truth. Spoiler alert. There's not one of these that there isn't some serious truth to. I do take exception and I do react to the hyperbole that's built in that I don't think was necessary. I think it would have been just as effective to say many businesses, But yeah, there's something to what he's saying for sure.
Well, actually, I think Jennifer's got a really good point here. There are points in the trajectory of my business where if you looked at it and you looked at the P&L, you'd be like, wow, Shawn has got his shit together. This business is so well run. He's making good margins, awesome growth, et cetera, et cetera. But if you were to talk to me, I would be like, this is freaking hard. I am miserable, right? I'd have people in my office crying, people super sad, just lots of things that don't show up on the P&L. And then at other times, you look at the business and you'd be like, wow, Kinesis isn't doing so great. I don't know. I wouldn't buy that business. And you talk to me, I'd be like, you know what? I'm really happy. This is a great place. The people care for me. Things are going well. I mean, that might be even a little bit of Jay's arc, right? Jay, you've talked about like super fast growth, but yet how unhappy you were in your earlier days.
Or I don't want to say I was just stressed, terrible stress. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I think Jennifer makes such a good point here because there's such a subjective perspective. And if you look at the P&L, it's just through one lens, you're seeing it. And I think this is the trap businesses fall into when they go through a merger or an acquisition or they buy a business is they're looking at it through one dimension. And I see this all the time. Oh, this is going to be so great. And they buy a business, they shove these two businesses together, and it's a disaster. And that's because they're not seeing it in its full picture.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point. Maybe one of the things that's not in the financial statements, how many people have been crying in the bathroom this year? That would be a good metric to keep track of. Basically what I'm saying is we're all 100% right.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of hyperbole. But there isn't one of these things that there isn't a point to.
It's true.
All right, let's try another one.
Go ahead.
Small businesses don't stay small on purpose.
Agreed. Got no problem with that one.
Is that true?
Yeah, I don't think people consciously say, oh, I don't want to get big. I think they're held back because they're held back.
If you have a restaurant,
well, that's true.
I mean, it depends on what kind of business you're in and what your goals are.
Sure.
Lauren, we had that interview with Cameron, a few weeks ago talking about his co-op, switching his business to a co-op. I think he was very clear on his choice of growth. of basically being his trajectory is going to maintain him as a small business for the next, 50 years. So I think he's made a choice, for a certain level of stability. I know a lot of owners who are like, yeah, I like it because I'm making a lot of money, so they've made that choice. But I think there are a lot of folks where their business is out of their control.
I'd largely agree. Again, I think if you put most on all of these, it would make them better. But this one's pretty true. I think that most small businesses would like to get bigger, but can't.
What about you, Jennifer? What do you think?
I'm not sure about this one. Sometimes they might want to stay small, but they can't because of the forces around them. Competitive pressure, you have to grow or you'll wither and die, or you get an incredible offer. If you have, these small tech companies, they might want to form a certain niche and then they get this ridiculous offer. It's hard to say no to transformational wealth. So to me, I took that as a negative. Maybe some people would like to, they just can't for the purposes around them, the competitive market. So I don't know about this one.
Next.
I know people who are solopreneurs and have chosen to stay that way. They don't want to hire employees. They're happy with what they're doing. I think there are certainly exceptions to that one. But again, I think his larger point is right. Next, most companies don't make much money.
I think that's totally false.
Oh, I see. I have to tell you, I think that one could largely be true.
Let's get clear here. We're talking net income. Are we talking make money, meaning money you get to keep versus revenue?
Yeah.
That's the way I would read it.
How many businesses make $500,000 a year net? Not many. $300,000 a year.
If the statistic, right, is most businesses are under $1 million in revenue. Most small businesses are under $1 million, 91%, something like that. So if they're making 10% net income, they're only making $100,000. That's pre-tax. So after tax, they're taking home $60,000.
All right, that's a good point. I was thinking more of you don't stay in business if you can't figure out the money. But I didn't think about how many small businesses are under $1 million. You're right.
No, Shawn's 100% right because I looked into this. Most businesses are very small. I mean, that's a fact. That's a fact. I mean, after doing the ESOP stuff, I looked into that, and clearly 99% of businesses are too small to even consider an ESOP. So that one, I think, is statistically just true.
And Jay, I wonder if that is to Lauren's discussion of consultants. They're businesses in almost name only because it's really just a consultancy, and they have no intention of growing it past being a consultant. So they have no intention of having employees, and they can only take as much work as they can personally handle. To me, I know legally they're businesses, but I don't think of them in the same. I think of a consultant as very different than a business.
Well, that clearly is part of the 99%. I mean, whether it's 10% or 20, but a lot of them are hair salons. There's plenty of service business, landscapers. You can make a long list of small businesses, and that isn't an opinion. That's a fact that 99% are small. So that one's pretty true.
What money they do make is almost always reinvested back into the business.
Probably true. Yeah, sure.
That's fairly true.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And I think that's the thing a lot of employees don't understand, especially if you don't do open book management. Hat tip to your sponsor, Lauren. I think the perception is often, oh, you own a business, you're making big money.
Yes.
Employees and the general public don't understand how much you're reinvesting back.
Here's an interesting point. I've spoke to several MBA classes. I'm talking a bit, big Northwestern, okay? These are the smart kids, quote unquote. No one's ever gotten my riddle right. It's kind of surprising to me. I show them if you're growing at X percent and you made X amount of money and you need X amount of money to fund the business, how much is left? None of these smart kids has ever said, well, you got to pay taxes on that money, even though you didn't take it out. That's the reality. And I've suffered from that terribly over the years. When you make money, even if you don't take it out, you got to pay the taxes on that money, this is what causes more cash flow problems. So you're paying the taxes,
right?
But you don't actually have the money because you put it in inventory. So I would say that one's pretty true.
Or you just put, Jay, I don't have inventory. You just put it in your bank account for a shitty day and you still have to pay taxes on it.
Or receivables or hiring new people. There's lots of things you could put money into that are not a tax deduction that you end up paying the taxes so I think that one's largely true.
I also think that unfortunately a few very, very large businesses run by billionaires have done a disservice to the incredible work that small businesses do for this country. And so a lot of people have this view that we're all like Dr. Evil, right? Like we're all this billionaire with this yacht.
Or spaceship.
We're just trying to squeeze every penny out of it instead of reinvesting into companies. And I think that's an issue for capitalism in this country, is that small businesses really help define communities. They're the ones who are giving back to the local baseball group or the girls' soccer group. Right? They're the ones doing it, not these giant billionaire type companies. And I think it's a shame that they set the mood.
Every 6 months or so, Jay tells us he doesn't want to be known as a CEO anymore. I think for specifically that reason.
Yeah, it's true. CEO's got a bad, it's got a bad connotation. And in my case, I'm a little company. It just occurred to me last year, I paid literally millions of dollars in taxes between the real estate taxes, sales tax, payroll taxes. I pay millions of dollars in taxes that even if I don't make money, that's the key. Even if I don't make $1, still got to pay the real estate taxes, still got to pay the sales tax, still paying the payroll tax. So it's the small businesses of America that are funding cities. There's no question.
Yeah, and I think you both make a really good point that I didn't understand back when I was all about demonizing the business world. I was like this idealistic artist. I was like, I will never be in business, right? And what a lot of folks don't understand is that until you become super rich, you are going to pay actually a maximum tax bill. You're going to pay crazy amounts of taxes. And when I mean super rich, I'm talking hundreds of millions of dollars. Then you can afford to do all these crazy schemes that allow you to pay like no taxes. And this is why I think, to Jennifer's point, we have this class of quote unquote business owner who the country kind of hates, rightly so, because they are not contributing to our society. And then at the same time, you've got this chunk of folks who make between, let's say revenues of $500,000 to $100 million, who are paying huge sums in taxes, like huge sums. And there's just no way around it. You cannot, there's no game to get out of paying those taxes, which is fine. But I think there's a disconnect because we get lumped in with that class of business owner who none of us really care for.
Well said, Shawn. You said it much better than I did.
So what you're saying is...
I'll say it. You guys are all good guys.
That's what I was looking for, Lauren. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
We're good. Yeah.
I don't want to say good guys and bad guys. No, I don't want to say that.
Okay. How about we're not the bad guys? Can we live with that?
We're not the bad guys.
We're contributing. We're contributing.
Yes.
We're contributing. Okay.
And I don't think that's well understood.
Here's one that I found really interesting. Most owners unknowingly tolerate a tremendous amount of risk. True?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
True. Yeah. 100%.
Well, tell me about the unknowingly part. What did you not realize?
Lauren's like, well, more.
Employee lawsuits. Someone slipped and came into your business, slipped. Some company sues you because your website isn't ADA compliant. I'm not going to say it's endless, but there's a long list of exposures that you have when you're in business, which is why when I talk to people that own picture frame shops and I say to them, if you're making $30-some thousand a year running your store, I have to ask you, are you sure you wouldn't be better off having a job somewhere making the same money? Because whether you know it or not, you're taking a lot of risk owning a store, and they don't think about it, a lot of them. And owning any business, you absolutely are exposed to risk.
And I think people don't always understand, too, that when you're a small business and you want to get a loan to help even out cash flow, that bank is going to require personal collateral, right? That my house has been on, bank loan to statements that the bank can come take my house. And that never happens to an employee. And it's hard. The understanding the cash flow is a critical component of being a small business owner, and it's overlooked a lot. It's certainly not talked about enough in any business class.
If at all.
If at all, right, Jay? And then understanding to help your cash flow, you might have to put up your house or your firstborn child to the bank. That's just not a risk.
Right.
No, they don't even want your firstborn child. They want the house.
A number of years back, I got this threatening letter from this very large company informing me that one of our clients had been using their photograph without paying for it.
There's one.
So what had happened, right? I had an employee who was a shitty employee. He had taken this photo, put it in as a kind of a mock-up for the website. We're talking 15 years ago. So puts it in the website, shows it to the client. The client's like, great, let's go. And what should have happened then is the client should have been billed for that photo or told, hey, if we want to buy this photo, this is what it costs. That didn't happen. It gets put on the website. It's in the public domain. I spent months and months and months at great expense fighting this company. And essentially, I basically just had to write a huge check. That's just one tiny example.
I would tell you, it surprises me they wouldn't let you just take it down and they left. I'm surprised it wasn't just a cease and desist order.
Well, they had built a whole department, a whole litigious department, basically around extorting small businesses for doing this. Because a lot of business owners would do it and not know what was going on. For me, this was just, honestly, this was malpractice on our part. And so we had to cover our client, of course. But like a lot of small business owners don't know about copyright law and they take advantage of that. And so there's a whole predatory industry out there.
So the answer is yes, there's risk in business that most of us couldn't even, if any of us, I couldn't make a list of every single possible risk. There are risks that we're not aware of. 100% right on that one. People are taking aspirin now listening to this.
Most owners work long, stressful, odd hours. Is that true, Jennifer?
That is very, very, very true. And you know what it is you don't know what you don't know. And business is not easily taught on the small business side. What they teach in college, I think, or graduate school is big business.
No question.
Yep.
So you spend an exorbitant amount of time just learning what to do. I think I understand now why once you've understood the magic of how to run a business, why people run multiple businesses. And I think because they figured it out, and it's very hard to go through that process of figuring it out.
You're talking to that person. That's exactly what happened to me. I spent 20 years getting ground down and stressed, and I finally figured it out. And that's when I started to start my other businesses. And it's absolutely true because I'm confident, not tech, but I could walk into many different businesses and run them because it's largely the same.
You both bring up such great points here. And I was thinking about our conversation earlier about taxes. What they teach you in business school is this really ill-serving concept, which is EBITDA, right? So think about this, right? In business school, they're telling you what matters is the money you make before taxes and interest payments.
Wait, and depreciation.
Which
is huge.
So, but you cannot get out of paying those things.
Right.
Like, this is the nonsense of how business school operates that doesn't work in the small business world.
Just so you know, Warren Buffett 100% agrees with that. He says he's, and I like when I can agree with Warren Buffett. He says EBITDA, he fully agrees with that. For a running business, it doesn't mean anything. Buying a business, that's another story because the depreciation isn't a real cash item. So when you buy a business, EBITDA does have a purpose because
some value.
No, because the depreciation isn't a real cost. So you don't have to pay for it.
But what about interest? I mean, interest is a real cost.
Well, if a company buys you, though, and has the cash, they don't have any interest expense. So that's also one that, like I said, if you sell a business or buy a business, that certainly has value. But if you're just running your business day to day, you could absolutely con yourself into believing you're doing well when maybe you had to buy a $200,000 printing press and that no longer shows up on your income statement because that was depreciation. So it is nonsense for running your business.
I also think, though, with your title of 21 hats, right? That's the whole concept of a small business owner. They wear 21 hats because they have to do 21 different separate type of activities. Business school, I think, trains you to do one. So you follow the finance model and you learn how to do the finance of a big company, or you follow the track from marketing and you learn how to do, or you follow sales, or you follow HR, or you follow all of those.
Yeah.
You can't do one thing, and you can't do anything so badly that it topples your company. So you have to be a generalist in 21 or more different things. And business school, I think, is training people to be specialists. I think if I use the medical school example, right, that the dearth of family physicians versus specialists. And that's us. We are the family physician, and we're taking care of babies and, older people. We are doing everything, and we have to be good enough to move to the next level on everything.
That is an indictment of business schools, which they deserve. The fact is, the 21 hats that we're talking about, they could teach that in school.
They absolutely could. And they could do it in a way that's not driven by the concept of a tech entrepreneur. If you're a small business person in the tech world who's hoping to get purchased in 3 to 5 years, that's a very different, different world than the rest of us, right?
I mean, you're absolutely right, Jennifer, 100%. And that's why I jokingly say go to Stanford. That whole program is, maybe I'm being a little cynical, but it's designed about getting tech entrepreneurs to be rich. But they're not teaching you how to run a profitable small business. They're teaching you how to go get investors.
No, they invented the term burn rate. That's where they invented the term. When you're in business, like, what? Oh, I'm supposed to be burning through money? Where's that money? Right.
It's other people's money. OPM.
Right. Yeah. All right. Next.
Okay. I'm going to try to go quickly through these because we got some good ones coming up. Neither number of employees nor revenue is a good proxy for the success of a business.
Done. Absolutely.
I agree.
Totally
with that.
Agree. 100%.
Yes.
100%.
That's agree. Yes.
Which is a real problem for journalists, I would point out, because sometimes it's hard to even get those numbers out of businesses. And it's very hard to write about a privately owned company where you can't go to Yahoo Finance and look up everything you could possibly want about the business. It's very challenging.
Well, no, the awards are for things that are associated with that, right? Awards. How many employees do you have? Awards around how much revenue you've grown, And
the publications do that because that's the only information they can possibly hope to get. Nobody's going to give them, their true profit numbers.
Yeah.
Joining a business group is a great way to understand that, because when you are in some other business group, you will learn all the different businesses and how they define a success, and you'll compare it to yours and you're like, wait, they have a lot less employees, or wait, they have a lot more revenue. It's freeing up your mind when you see other small businesses. So join a business group.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, next.
Fast growth is counterintuitively more perilous than declining revenue and can quickly destroy a company.
Ridiculous.
Ridiculous. I agree.
That could be true, but lots of times declining revenue is a problem. Could fast growth put you out of business? There's some truth to that, but just some.
But you can stop fast growth. You can stop it. It's harder to stop declining revenue. So you have more control over fast growth.
Yeah, you raise your prices.
And you just don't take the business, right? Like you have more control over it than the other one.
But as I said before, there's some truth to that.
I think it would have been more interesting if he had said fast growth can be more perilous than slow growth.
Yes.
Which is
and
intriguing.
The word can.
Yes.
Every single one of these could be fixed with one word. Most, can, some. That's all. One word would have fixed every one of these.
Well, I think the point he's trying to make is that fast growth can catch you unexpectedly. It can crush you because nobody talks about the impacts of it. It's celebrated, right? Again, to the awards, it's celebrated. But nobody talks about the cash flow consequence of fast growth. That's just not discussed.
Or it's just this personal stress.
Or the personal stress or, all the other stuff. So he makes a good point. I think I remember seeing a finance guy map out how to go bankrupt by growing fast. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. I had no understanding. Again, this is 15 years ago. But I think most business owners don't understand that either. They don't teach cash flow. That's not a thing.
The other problem these days is people could talk about cash flow. They use it to, I've got bad cash flow. No, you're not profitable. That's not the same thing. The truest sense of you have a cash flow problem is you're profitable, but the money's getting tied up in receivables, inventory. If you're losing money, you have a profit problem and a cash flow problem. So they use that now. It's almost less embarrassing to say I have a cash flow problem than saying I'm losing money. But they throw it all into the same bucket, and it's really not the same thing. Next.
Culture is nothing more than what you reward and punish, not what you put in your mission, vision, values statement.
Completely ridiculous. I don't even know what he's talking about.
I'll tell you what he's talking about.
I don't know. This one I'm not so sure about, Jay.
Well, let me pay off. Let me give you my opinion on this. When you say culture, he says in there basically, it's all about what you punish and reward. That's your corporate culture. That's just absurd. Your corporate culture is how far do you go for customers? How do you treat each other? What are the values of your company? How many hours are expected?
I think you're saying the same thing, Jay.
He's just saying rewarding and punishing.
I think he says it in a way to spark drama, but I think the concept is accountability. So if you have written words in your mission and vision and value statements, but you don't hold employees accountable to that.
Or yourself.
Yes.
Well,
right.
let's talk about
and you don't
that.
encourage.
There's something to what this one's the furthest one. This can't be fixed with one word, unfortunately. But yes, I understand his meaning of stop with the corporate culture and the vision statements. But I have a problem with the punish and reward part.
I think it's accountability. That's where he's going with it.
I don't think he's saying stop with them. I think he's saying they don't mean anything unless you act upon them. And it's what you say and what you do that matters.
Okay. Well, to Jennifer's point, replace punish and reward with accountable. No problem. Done. So it took 2 words to fix that one.
He's addressing the motivational poster.
Yes.
I mean, that's really what he's talking.
Yes.
He's talking about the break room poster.
Which I made a lot of money framing, I have to add, 25 years ago. Accessories was a Chicago company. 30 years ago, I framed hundreds of thousands of dollars of those motivational posters.
Oh my gosh. Did you roll your eyes every time? Or are you just like, this is great. I'll make some money on this.
No, it was a good run. It was a good run while it lasted. That didn't last either.
These days, TikTok is littered with young adults of where companies are not using their mission, vision, and value statements to deal with employees. I mean, young employees will go to TikTok so quick to call out companies on the disparity between what they say and what they do. And I think, I don't like the way he said it, but I think in essence, it's true.
There's no question. We all can interpret. We got his point. It's just that one wasn't that articulate. But there's certainly the point of you can't just say we got a good corporate culture. At the end of the day, it's are you taking care of customers, making money, holding people accountable?
Jay, I think you need to frame that one and see if it sells.
Yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll run it up the flagpole, see if anyone salutes. Okay, next.
Most employees couldn't tell you why they do what they do or how it contributes to the success of the business.
This is total horseshit. I'm sorry. I don't know who he's talking to, but like, that is just...
Can we call that one cynical?
Do some have a narrow perspective? Sure. Do new and entry employees have very little clue? For sure. Do some roles have less vantage than others? Yes. But like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, not knowing what they do?
I'm with you on that one.
I mean... this one drove me crazy hearing that.
Really?
I mean, is that true for corporate America? 100%. Is that true within the small business ecosystem? I don't think so.
This reminds me, do you remember the TPS reports from that movie, right?
Yes.
That's what this reminds me of.
That's an Office Space comment. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So, Shawn, it's the corporate environment where somebody's doing a TPS reports and has 7 supervisors. I don't think it's applicable to small businesses, but...
I misspoke before. I said they all have this one. No, I don't think he has any. This one I would reject. The rest of them so far, okay, there was something. This one, I don't think there's anything here.
Reread it, Lauren. Please reread it, because there's 2 parts to it. Like he's making 2 really extreme claims in this.
Most employees couldn't tell you why they do what they do or how it contributes to the success of the business. And let me just say, Shawn, I think that what he's addressing here is the reason you decided to open your books. It's so that your employees have a better understanding of what drives the success of the business.
Right.
I don't think this is that far off.
That's the latter part of that question. But the most employees don't know why they do what they do.
But I think he's saying the same thing there.
Crazy.
He's not saying that they're all walking around in circles and confused about, what their role is, that they don't have the broader picture and don't understand what their activities do to actually contribute to the success of the business.
Okay. Now you're putting words in his mouth.
I don't think so.
Broader picture. Okay, there's some truth to that, but that's not what he said.
All right, you know what? I'm going to do a poll of my employees. I've decided
Okay.
I'm going to go
Yeah.
ask them
Good.
if they can do it. And hopefully that this Brent is not right. Hopefully my employees.
I mean, okay, look, hey, to our earlier discussion, who is Brent talking to, right? People who want to sell their business. And I think Jay brought up a good point. A lot of people who want to sell their business are old people. So we're talking about baby boomers who ran their businesses in a very different way than the current generation, with Jay being an exception.
Command and control.
For sure. But so this is selection bias, right? It's like, that is not my experience with the clients I work with. That is not my experience. Even within like when I was an EO, that was not my experience with more contemporary businesses and business owners.
I would say of all of this one so far, this one's the one that all three of us think is the least. In my case, I don't think there's anything to it, but this one, the rest of them, there was something to. This one, not so much. Let's get a new, fresh one.
Next, the most dangerous time for a business is when the owner first experiences some financial success or significant notoriety. Few survive it.
Oh, for God's sake. Kiss my ass. That's what I want to say to that one. Really? Oh, they all just go crazy and they go out and start going on the lectures. Give me a break. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
I mean, I could pick like 3 or 4 things that are more dangerous than that for sure. Like partner conflict.
Yeah.
Most dangerous time is when you have one client who's responsible for more than 30% of your revenue and they go away.
Got a big credit line and used it all.
Yeah. I mean, I could just think of a lot more dangerous things. I mean, I won this like very prestigious growth award for 5 years in a row. And that was pretty good. I mean, like, it was not dangerous. It was pretty good. I was growing. I was making good revenue.
When I read this, I was thinking, Shawn, to what you said, I feel like sometimes the most dangerous time is like the first year and a half of a business. But then the second part, I would say, is when a successful family business transitions generations.
Oh, yes.
Certainly, for sure. No, absolutely. My point is, I was on the front cover of Inc. magazine. I was featured in Small Giants. I won awards. Like really? It goes to your head and you just become a coke addict or something? I mean, what a ridiculous. That one's just completely ridiculous.
Jay, we're going to have an intervention, and we wanted to talk to you about your coke problem on this episode.
And I was surprised he didn't talk about family businesses in any of these. He didn't say that to me, that transition, because I've seen it in some of my business groups. Jay, you've talked about that struggle.
Absolutely.
Is that there's a lot of family businesses out there in the U.S. where people are retiring and their children want to take it over. And that's a critical time period of that. And I'm surprised he didn't talk about that at all.
Well, this is why. Those companies are going to him instead of transitioning to the family.
Oh,
so he probably doesn't have any of them, because why would they be talking to him?
Yeah, because they're going to sell. Yep.
Right. Or their kids are taking over. They have no interest. They have no reason to talk to him. So I can understand that one. Is there some truth to it could cause a problem? Sure. But to suggest, what was the last words? Few survive? Is that how it finished? Few survive it?
That's how it finished.
Is that what it said?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. That's preposterous.
I will say this. There is a point here in that I did an analysis once of this fastest growing award thing, which I was talking about earlier. And I did notice a trend where a lot of folks who are on that list were also on another list like 2 or 3 years later, which was the business's closing list.
I don't think there's any argument. I think they would admit that if you cornered them. I've heard 50% of those businesses are out of business, and I think that's believable.
Yeah, there's some truth there.
Last one. Occasionally we see a business that breaks most of the above, and it blows my mind how profitable it is, how happy their employees and customers are, and how well they serve their community.
Okay, once again, one word. Take out the word occasionally. How about just saying, sometimes we see, like, seriously, it's just occasionally, like 1 out of 50 companies are successful and happy. Give me a break. Occasionally? Seriously? That's just ridiculous.
Well, statistically, he's probably right. You know, like I said, it's a huge marketplace and there's a lot of dysfunction in it. We just don't, again, 91% don't get above $1 million, right? So
I know, but that doesn't mean they're not making 6-figure incomes and happy.
True.
So I would like to finish with, if you read this, you'd think, why would anyone want to be in business for themselves after reading this list? And the answer is because being in business for yourself is a joyous, rewarding, luxury gift that you can make customers happy, you can make a nice living for yourself or family, you can provide career paths for your employees, give them confidence, give them security, give them meaning. Owning a business is a lovely, beautiful thing. That's why.
Well said, Jay. I agree. I mean, I get incredible joy from doing what we do for our customers. I love my customer base. I've kept it very niche. I love it. I absolutely adore it when I've been able to train up younger employees and see over the past 10 years them become leaders and successful. And one of them who just bought a house because she's had this fantastic job, right, to do it. That inspires me personally. And I think, Jay, that there are difficulties and stress, but there's incredible personal satisfaction that we can give back to our employees, our customers, and our community.
You brought up exactly what I was going to say. I've helped 10 people buy houses over the last 40 years.
Yes.
10 people have bought houses, raised families. There's no greater satisfaction in the world. So I would say my number one would have been business is like nature. It goes everywhere from beautiful sunsets and lovely warm summer days to hurricanes. That's what business is, but it's both. If you read his list, it sounds like it's a constant hurricane, and that's simply not the case. If it was, you'd be out of business at some point.
Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I want to thank all three of you. You guys did exactly what I knew you would, which is to talk realistically about what it takes to build a business. So my thanks to Shawn Busse, Jay Goltz, Jennifer Kerhin, and to our sponsor, The Great Game of Business, which helps businesses use an open book management system to build healthier companies. You can learn more at greatgame.com. Thanks, everybody. Wait, don't leave yet. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like the 21 Hats owners to address, send it to me by replying to your morning report or by email at lauren@21hats.com. That's LOREN @21hats.com. Do it now before you forget. And don't be afraid to tell Jay what you really think. He can take it. And if you got something out of this conversation, help us reach more business owners. Tell a friend. Subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to The Morning Report at 21hats.com. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Okay, now you can leave. Thanks for listening, everyone.